Getting to one Bitcoin is nearly impossible. And in this video, I want to go through the numbers to show you why this is the case. Let's get started. This is a compound interest calculator that I created that shows you how much money you'd have to put into Bitcoin in order to get to certain amounts of Bitcoin. So let's say if you put $10,000 per month into Bitcoin at a 30% growth rate, your Bitcoin keeps growing at 30% per year. You put it in monthly, you'd have one Bitcoin about a year from now. But if you were to put $100 per month into Bitcoin and it gives you a 30% growth rate, you will never get to one Bitcoin. You max out at about 0.05 Bitcoin or 5 million Satoshis. Part of the reason why it's so difficult for people to get to one Bitcoin is it's mathematically impossible for everybody on earth to get to one Bitcoin. As more people figure out what Bitcoin is, they put more of their energy and time towards Bitcoin and they accumulate whatever they can. And as demand increases, price also increases because supply is finite. So no matter what happens, not everybody can get to one Bitcoin. If you put $100 worth of your savings into Bitcoin every single month, like I said, you'd be able to max out at about 5 million Satoshis or 0.05 Bitcoin. With $10,000 per month, and that's assuming a 30% growth rate, and it's assuming that Bitcoin's price doesn't just skyrocket overnight, you'd be able to get to one Bitcoin within a year. If you want to play around with these numbers for yourself, you can actually go to File, you can go to Download, and you can save the file to your computer. From my experience, most people can't put $10,000 per month into Bitcoin, and most people can't even put $100 per month into Bitcoin because they don't have the savings to do that. I do a lot of one on one consultations. If you want to book one, you can actually check the link in the description below. The majority of people, in my experience, are earning a certain amount of money and they're spending everything after tax on their needs and their wants. And a lot of people are actually going into debt to fulfill their needs and their wants. So they're in an even worse position that we see here. Instead of having zero savings, they have negative savings and they're paying interest on the expenses that they have. So just to maintain their life, they have to pay interest to their bank. What we see here is your needs are the things that you need to survive. Your wants are the things that you want to improve your lifestyle, for example. So if you're earning $10,000 per month and your tax rate is 30%, your after tax earnings will be $7,000 per month. If your needs are $5,000 per month and your wants are $2,000 per month, all of your income goes towards just maintaining your lifestyle and you can't put anything towards the future. One of the ways that you can increase your savings is to cut some of your wants or to decrease your standard of living so that you can put some more money towards your savings. This may not be the best way, but it is one of the ways to get to your financial goals and to retire at some point in the future. Keep in mind that the people who are following this budget, who are putting everything towards their needs and their wants and have no savings, these people may never ever be able to retire. So you don't want to be in this position. Next, we have the extreme budget. So you're earning the same amount of income, you have the same after tax income, you're putting $5,000 towards your needs, just like in the first scenario, but you're not putting anything towards your wants. You're not going on vacation, you're not paying for entertainment, you're not doing any of that. You're putting everything else towards savings. So you've basically replaced your wants with your investments or your savings. So you're putting $2,000 per month into your savings. You're not enjoying your life. You're not putting your money towards the things that you want today. Instead, you're delaying gratification for the future. The only problem with this is that you don't know if tomorrow is guaranteed. You don't know if the future is guaranteed. For all we know, we could die tomorrow. We could get hit by a bus right before we want to actually retire. I think it's key to find a balance. You don't need one whole Bitcoin. With $2,000 per month, you probably would get to one Bitcoin at some point. And if we just run the numbers here, we can see you'd get to about 0.99 Bitcoin in 2067. And at that point, I don't even think you'll need that much Bitcoin because one Bitcoin will be worth $6 billion if you get a 30% annual return. I think the best scenario for most people is to find some kind of balance. So, for example, if you have a 50-30-20 budget, you're putting 50% towards your needs, you're putting 30% towards your wants, and then 20% towards your savings. Of course, if your needs cost you $5,000 per month, this may not work for you. So, the best way for you to work around this is to increase your income. In this scenario, you can put $2,100 per month towards the things that you want today, plus you have an additional $1,400 per month that you can put towards your savings. But if your expenses are $5,000 per month and there's no way for you to cut that down to $3,500, what do? If your needs stay fixed, you're spending $5,000 per month on the things that you need every single month, you won't have enough money to save. You actually will go into debt just to fulfill your wants. I think the best thing that you can do here is to increase your income. Instead of cutting out your wants, instead of cutting out your needs, try to earn more money, create more value, add it to the economy, and you'll get paid. I think it's possible for anybody who's watching this video to increase their income by 20% per month so that they can put more towards their savings. So if we look at these numbers again, in the first scenario, you have $5,000 in your needs, you have $2,000 in your wants, you have zero in your savings. In the last scenario, you have $5,000 going towards your needs. You have a little bit more going towards your wants. So you have $2,100 instead of 2,000, but you also have $1,300 going towards your savings. I know that earning $12,000 per month isn't realistic for everyone. Not everyone is going to earn that much money. So you can download this file and just adjust these numbers based on your own scenario. So let's say instead of earning $10,000 per month today, you're earning $1,000 per month today. You're living in a low cost of living area. You can adjust that number from 1,000 to 1,200. So we'll go with 1,200 here. Your needs are going to, of course, adjust down. So your needs are going to be $500 per month. Your wants are going to be $210 per month. After spending money on your needs and your wants, you still have $130 that you can put towards Bitcoin every single month. So you don't need one whole Bitcoin, because if you delay gratification, if you wait a little bit longer, you can actually get away with having a much smaller amount of Bitcoin and you can still retire. So if we adjust these numbers based on this scenario here, based on your low cost of living area, if you have $710 per month in your monthly expenses, you put $130 per month towards Bitcoin, you'd have about 6 million Satoshis by 2040. We can see here by this time, your stack will be worth $339,000. Your monthly expenses will only be $1,278. So the amount of money that you have in your savings divided by your annual expenses will be 2,211%. So your portfolio will be about 22 times whatever your monthly expenses are. So first of all, you don't need to get to one whole Bitcoin. You can retire with a significantly smaller amount. As long as you're putting money towards Bitcoin, at some point, you'll be able to become financially free. The best way to get to your goal of Bitcoin isn't to buy it over time, it's to buy it all at once. If you have the money to get to, let's say, zero point 0.1 Bitcoin today, I think that the best thing that you can do is to buy zero point 0.1 Bitcoin today. So we can see here in 2040, you'd have about 0.063 Bitcoin. That's 15 years from now. If we scroll a little bit over to the right, we can see these numbers here. In 15 years, it'd be 2040. You would have invested $23,400 to get to 0.063 Bitcoin. If you were to buy this amount of Bitcoin today rather than waiting and buying monthly amounts over time, it would only cost you about $6,600. So I'll just put that number here, 0.063. It'll cost you $6,615. But if you were to invest that amount over time, over the next 15 years, it would cost you $23,400. And there's a chance that you may never get to that 0.063 Bitcoin if Bitcoin's returns are much higher than what I expect them to be. If you were to just buy a certain lump sum of Bitcoin today and you don't buy any more Bitcoin going forward, the amount of Bitcoin that you have will increase in value based on this 30% return per year. So let's say you have $10,500 lying around, you can buy zero point 0.1 Bitcoin today. At some point, even if you do nothing else, your Bitcoin portfolio's value would increase significantly. So by 2045, in 20 years, your Bitcoin will be worth $2 million. On the other hand, if you were to invest the same amount of money in the stock market, it'll give you about a 7% growth rate over the next 20 years. You'd have $42,000. So with Bitcoin in the next 20 years, you'd have $1,995,000, while with the stock market, you'd only have $42,406. When you look at these numbers, it makes almost no sense to buy the stock market when something like Bitcoin exists. But keep in mind that the majority of people who have money to buy Bitcoin aren't doing it because they want to wait until Bitcoin is stable. They're waiting for Bitcoin to not be as volatile as it is today. They don't like the fact that Bitcoin's price goes up and it comes down. They want Bitcoin to just grind up and never have any drawdowns, but that's probably never going to happen in terms of US dollars. Bitcoin is stable, but that's only in terms of Bitcoin. It's never going to be stable in terms of US dollars because the supply of US dollars is pretty much unknown. I think by the time most people figure it out, one Bitcoin will be worth $10 million. So it'll cost $1 million to buy zero point 0.1 Bitcoin. Today, that zero point 0.1 Bitcoin will cost you $10,500, but it'll be worth $1 million when most people actually catch on and figure out what Bitcoin is. One of the reasons why it's so difficult to get to these goals is because it's really difficult to wrap your head around the fact that something digital could have value. Over time, as more people figure out what Bitcoin is, the value of the network will continue to increase. And the people who accumulate Bitcoin today are going to have a significant amount of wealth compared to the people who don't accumulate Bitcoin. It's going to get harder and harder to get to 1 Bitcoin. It's going to get harder and harder to get to zero point 0.1 Bitcoin, even 0.01 Bitcoin. It's going to get much more difficult to get to these points because as more people figure out what Bitcoin is, they're not going to want to sell it. So there's a mismatch in supply and demand here. The supply can't change, but demand can increase forever. It is mathematically impossible for everyone on earth to get to a whole Bitcoin. So even if you can get fractions, I think you're going to do very well compared to the average person. The average person is going to continue to ignore Bitcoin until it's $10 million. And my point here is to get you to start stacking today so that you're not waiting until Bitcoin is $10 million, so that this asset can actually benefit you over the next few decades, few years. My goal with this channel is to get you to start stacking Bitcoin before the average person figures it out, because by the time the average person figures it out, the majority of it will be held by institutions. If you can get your hands on zero point 0.1 Bitcoin today, 0.01 Bitcoin today, whatever the amount is, at some point, I think you're going to be very happy with the decision that you made. The best thing that you can do is to decrease your expenses, increase your income, and put the difference towards Bitcoin. The majority of people aren't doing this. They're putting their money towards the stock market, towards the bond market, and towards real estate, which are giving them much lower returns than the returns that Bitcoin is giving them. So don't go based on the status quo. Do something different. If you want your life to be different, if you want your life to be better than the average person, then you have to do something that the average person isn't willing to do. Most people are completely risk averse. They don't want to put their money towards Bitcoin because they don't understand everything about it. And trust me, you will never understand everything about it. I've been studying it for about 4 years and I'm still learning something new every single day. The best thing that you can do for yourself today is to stack as much Bitcoin as you can, whether that's $15, $20, $100 per month. Just start buying, because eventually you won't be able to buy those same amounts of Bitcoin. The amount of Bitcoin that costs you $10,500 today is going to cost you $1 million when more people figure out how this thing works. Stop delaying it. Put your time, energy, and effort towards understanding what Bitcoin is and towards figuring out where it could go. And I think that you're not going to be disappointed.